So, just to give me the timer so I don't end up rambling too long. I kind of came on to David to give this talk or to provide this talk because I started working in games, I think officially in 21 or in the Game Hub in 20. Name is Sebastian, but more for that later. So the main topic today is how to playtest, or what we can learn from things I've learned in my other job doing UX research and what it can tell us about playtesting. But first a few things, what we are talking about if we are talking about playtesting. So you have a game idea, and if I talk about playtesting tonight, I'm also going to include stuff like, yeah, we're doing a paper prototype, we're doing it in person or in a very reduced way to test something, to test the game concept itself. Stuff like the testing night that we have every first Wednesday in the month, right? Last, yeah, Wednesday. Or every other situation where you give your game to real players or people playing it. And yeah, what I want to focus on is playtests where we test player experience, where we test stuff like, or anonymous concept like game feel, or even stuff like the player's perception. And there is always this big question, everyone kind of does it differently. There is QA testing, that's not playtesting. When I talk about it, how many people do we need? What should we watch out for? Everyone has like a different method. You have a feeling about the game concept if you see it, or if you see how people play it. And it's sometimes very difficult to interpret feedback or get it in a way that you can interpret it or can justify making changes to the game. And stuff like, is the game fun enough, is really hard to evaluate. So, about me, those who don't know me yet, or don't have a very, or don't know me yet from the Game Hub. So I'm Sebastian. I did game design in 2017 in Zurich, at the Zurich University of the Arts. And in 22 we founded Zeitglas. I think we were one of the few first full-time play studios, or in 21 we got the space in the Gamespace right during COVID, which was great to have something like that. And since 2023 I'm also working at an agency called Zeitglas. That was founded in 2000, which is really old for this kind of business. And the main goal of the company, or the stated goal since then, has been to make technology usable and accessible. It's an agency for user-centered design and UX design, although that's a bit of a difficult term. We are around 32 people there, as opposed to Zeitglas, where we are only 2 real employees. And during my time at Zeitglas, I did a lot of usability testing. Zeitglas developed a very clear way of how to test apps, to test stuff, and to test it in a way that you could really use the results. There are a lot of different methods that you can use in these kind of app testing or usability testing. The picture on the right, that's from something that we did back in 2024, was also in the media later. That's for the SBB. They wanted to evaluate different concepts of how to lay out places in the train. And we did the testing for it. It was quite a big thing, or a bit too big in our taste. It was a test where you had a prototype, paper prototype, or in that case cardboard and plywood prototype, and people were able to sit down and later even watch the interior with VR glasses in like an extended reality way, and tell us about their feeling about this this new seating arrangement. They had a lot of different arrangements that you don't have yet in trains, because you only have like the 4x4 or the 4 space, and this was a evaluation that the SBB did to determine if it was feasible to do it some other way, or at least maybe in first class do it differently. Yeah, and what have I learned during that time? I did a lot of tests. This one with the SBB was just one. There was another one for Meteo Schweiz, the weather app, or the weather people, where we did tests about probability and stuff like getting rain, the probability for rain. There was also the learning that, yeah, people don't understand probability generally. They understand 50%, they understand 100%, but everything in between is pretty difficult to understand. So what have I learned, and how is it applicable for games? It might sound trivial, but the first real question that you always have to pose to yourself in the UX research area, or even in games, is the question, do we understand the problem? As creatives in game design, we do have the tendency to jump into solutions really fast without maybe taking a step back and really analyzing, okay, how and why did something happen now, specifically for stuff like player experience or game fun. There are also differences which I kind of like to point out, and nothing I say here is like 100% truth, because it's a blurry field, because we are dealing with humans, and humans are not like sharply divided into things. Generally, working in UX, the task is to make something effortless, while in games we do have the advantage that we sometimes can challenge players, or to encourage that they reflect about something. That's something that we don't want to do in UX design for applications. We do a lot of applications for government stuff, or commercial products, where the application is a means to an end to do something. In a game, that's a creative project, that's a work with vision and expression. And we also have more innovation maybe, or a balance between innovation and uniqueness in games that we don't usually would do in applications. And the last one, for all the government applications that you test, people there have to engage with the product or the app to do something. And in games, to get out our old friend Huitzinger, games are a voluntary experience. So people, and that's a cool thing to have in games, because our users or players want to engage with what you have, with the game itself. So, the big two things, or probably a lot of you have already heard, like the big two methods how to do something. Quantitative. Numbers good, business likes numbers. There are a lot of platforms out there that will get you your game out to players. They're also not inexpensive. We had a free test that we could do with our game. It didn't really help that much. It's really a method where you ask players like, okay, we have a survey on a number from 1 to 5. How important is this and this thing to you? They do have a use. If you have stuff like questionnaires and surveys, that's really good to like getting the numbers for all the numbers people. So the publishers, the funding people, they really like numbers. You can put a number into a spreadsheet and tell something is good or bad. And it's good to evaluate how well your game does in general with your target audience. And you can maybe identify things like, okay, we know there is an issue with the UI, but you maybe cannot really tell why. You maybe can identify areas with issues. What I'm going to talk about or going to show you is all the parts that we do in a qualitative test. So here we really want to know what's the story that a player has when playing the game. What I'm going to show you, I call it now very pompous, the qualitative moderated playtest. It sounds bigger than it is. It's a moderated playtest where you have a clear script and structure that you follow, and you really try to get out everything out of a playtester, a single person at a time, and get behind what's their mental model. How do they expect or assume the game works behind the scenes? What do they expect when they send a unit to position X? And do they read tooltips? Do they understand the clues? Those questions that you usually ask yourself, and then maybe overdo it, leading to stuff like, okay, yeah, we put a yellow border around it, and then draw another line on the ground that you really know where to go. And maybe a solution would be way simpler. And also to identify, okay, where specifically do players get stuck? And for that, I have not to hate on any event that we do. It's really great to have a playtesting night in the Game Hub, especially for designing games. But if you really want to know if something works, we have to get the intuitive reaction of the player. And game devs are really shit playtesters in that aspect, because our intuitive reaction is way different. So all convention is interesting, maybe not the right place for the right game. It really depends what kind of game that it is. But even for the questionnaires, people will make a cognitive summary and write that into a questionnaire. And maybe there is a lot of opinion or rationalizations they did about some stuff. That's not even necessarily true. I observed a lot of usability tests in that case, where people were quite certain they did something really well without any problems. But if you observe them, they struggled really bad, or they did a thing that was a really big no-no in that test, or they did an action that they wouldn't have done normally. But if you ask them post-test in the interview, they will give you an answer like, yeah, I really found it easy to use. Like, you struggled everywhere. There is a lot of social expectations stuff that plays into that, but that's a really important part. Why we want to structure a game or a playtest in a certain way to really get to, not the truth, but to get as close as possible to the reality that players experience. Now, for this question that I posed in the beginning on how to answer that, how many playtesters do we need? As usual, there is an old man that did something in the 2000s that we still kind of use today. Jacob Nielsen, the Nielsen-Norman Group is like one of the big research agencies for this kind of stuff. And they did an article back in 2000 that, yeah, basically if you're looking for usability issues, you do it sequentially, and after 5 users, you usually found 85% of the problems. And they also say that you should limit the test to about 90 minutes, just the space that a human could reasonably concentrate, or where you wouldn't see any like fragments of people getting tired. And also for you, the tester, or the testing person, because it's really hard work to observe the people and make the notes for it. So that's about where they add. In my experience, 6 to 8 users or players are enough, but you also have to be representative of your target audience. So if you have a distribution, you kind of need to match that distribution at least a bit. You can leave room for flexibility, maybe take a wild card in or not, but and that's probably something that's very difficult for games, because usually we would also say, hey, try to test people in their native language. And I don't know a lot of people that could do a usability test in Chinese, Korean, and so on. So we maybe have to be flexible there, but it also really, you kind of need to have a target audience in mind, a relatively good idea what your target audience look like to get this one right. And it's also no guarantee that we catch everything. That's something that we can do in the quantitative research. And now, avoid the professional testers or these testing platforms, because if players do a lot of these kind of playtests on a platform where they get money for each playtest they do, especially the people that live in more developed countries where the points and cash that you get for playtests are relatively a lot, and they're not really testing the game in the same way that a normal player would, and so you don't get an intuitive reaction, that one that you want to have, this intuitive reaction. Another thing, a lot of people do this out of a social responsibility, and they want to be socially responsible. There are sometimes people that want to speak for other players, and in these kind of playtests, or even if you're thinking about, okay, I'm gonna method act out a player, I'm gonna put myself into the mindset of a player, you cannot imitate these intuitive things. So you can't speak for other people in these kind of tests. There will always be signals for that. There will always be test artifacts that show up in that way. And in what we generally do, if we do tests for other companies, we ask them, okay, what kind of reward do you want to give the playtesters? They take out time for you, you should reward them, generally in a way that's easy to transfer, maybe not the key to the game. They're already fan if they want to test for a key to the game, just Steam funds or payment in cash. It doesn't have to be a lot. Usually it's around 100 francs or 200, depending on how long you're taking someone's time. Now, the more concrete question is also, what do you really want to test about the game? Generally, you want to test something that is special, or what makes your game special or different than other games. Are players getting this mechanic that doesn't exist in any other game? Avoid testing stuff that is an established pattern in games. So like FPS controls and WSD, you don't have to test that. You just maybe have to test this. How fast do people get this kind of control scheme? You can leave room to note any issues there, like with controls or with game feels. And generally do test what you're unsure about. We all know tutorials are very hard. Playtest this way, great thing to test a tutorial and to test how much tutorial you have to give a player before they feel annoyed. So we make a list of that. And to give you something more practical, I brought with you a test that we did for this game from Denis, Lavender Station. Goes into the category or the genre of simulation, casual, cute, management, building cozy, atmospheric, family-friendly, idler. And the test person in this example is really a person that fits into the target audience. So the target audience is mid-core, gamer female, and you manage a station in a very beautiful landscape. You expand this train station, the platform. The game is about building the routines, aesthetic, and it's not really about making money, but it's kind of like a cozy tycoon game, would I myself describe it. The ideal playtest person, or the person for this playtest, I was very lucky. I married her 2 years ago, because my wife is usually someone who plays stuff like second screen games, like Cookie Clicker, while playing Neo 3 at the moment. So she was really a person that fit into the test audience or the target audience. Not ideal, but it was just to as a demonstration test here. What we did together was to first formulate stuff. We called it test hypotheses. It's generally just a list of things that you think ideally how the ideal player would act in the game. What's the ideal journey look like for a player? Yeah, they can intuitively understand how to use the mouse to pick up trash that you have to do in the game. I'm gonna see that afterwards. players read tutorial windows and can interpret them. And that's just a list of a lot of these statements. Positive statements, they have to be positive, we come to that afterwards. And these are like the control points on a big checklist that we later will use to evaluate how well something works. Nothing of this is super scientific. Nothing of this is absolute, but it gives you a way to visualize and to structure a playtest to control for stuff. So these are like the control points we want to do with Lavender Station. In app usability tests, we are using the word scenario. Here, I would more call it like a section, so like a level or a part of the game, where we have in like this first column, that's always that what you say or what you are allowed to say to the playtester, or how to introduce the game, the section. And sometimes you have like markings for follow-up questions, and we have a specific condition that needs to be reached to say, okay, yeah, this section is now successfully completed. This was just, yeah, start the game, do like the introduction of the game, and then a few questions about, okay, how do you expect the game to continue? Follow up with, okay, and what's now the next step that you take? And then we just let them play for as long as we have time for. Sometimes you have a lot of time that you need to set up a playtest to can record it correctly, so these 90 minutes aren't really a lot of time. The setup itself. This example test is not perfect because we have just one person doing the test. Usually want two person. One is the moderator. That's the only person that will talk to the playtester during the test. They do an interview, they do all these scenarios. That's the only person that ever talks. In the background, someone takes notes. Notes in the sense of, okay, what are people doing? Where do they click first? What do they read first? And you can do this remote or in person. In person can be easier sometimes if you're doing something like a couch co-op multiplayer. Makes sense to do it in person or as close as possible to reality. Other than that, you can use Discord and OBS to record the screen share of the person. Discord really nice because you can screen share and the audio comes with it automatically. That's a bit different for other tools like Antidote, GG, and Lookback. Those are platforms that have all these features and you can do the tests yourself or even hire people, but that gets pricey pretty quickly. And if you're doing a recording, you also have to get the consent from the player. I'm not a legal expert. How to do this, it really depends on where the player's from and what kind of laws apply. In general, do it via a form that they have to tick a box. And when you start the recording, ask them again. And if you're doing the form, also tell them what you're going to do with the record. If you're having a recording and you maybe want to look at it later during design, you can say, okay, it will be only used internally by the team. You don't have to record the face. Sometimes it's really helpful to see where people's gazes wander, but in general, you don't really need to record the face. And also, you have to have a limit on how long you're keeping a record. Usually, in other places, we say, okay, we keep it a year. So keep that in mind. If you want to develop a game over 3 years, you maybe want to keep it just to show as an example, but also make sure you don't use it in a trailer or something if you have this recording, because it's still the voice of the playtester in the background. Even if it's not recognizable, just be very clear on what you're doing with that, because people trusted you in that moment when you pressed the record button. And who is gonna be the playtester or the test moderator? That really depends. It's generally not a good idea if the person that designed and programmed and really put a lot of into the game is also the the tester, because you're going to influence stuff. Even with this test, I probably influenced a lot of stuff. That's just something that happens. So also if other people are watching this test, you need to do it in a way that the playtester doesn't see that. It's okay if like one additional person is in the call and you just introduce them and say, okay, yeah, background, my colleague here is going to take notes. If other people from your team want to watch, find a way to like stream it without people noticing it. Because if there are like 15 people, if someone comes in and does a playtest, now you're doing it in front of an audience. That's just more of a psychological thing there. You automatically are in this testing situation. And that's also important that we can get this out of people to prepare the playtesters. What we always say is that we are testing a game, or this game, this product, not you. Because if you give them tasks to do, scenarios you do, and they don't understand something, they will automatically feel like they failed, because it's a task in a test, and my programming from school says me I have to ace a test, but the test is not about the playtester, it's about the game. So we just need to get this out to the playtester, like in the very first introduction when we say what we're going to do. This is really important, because otherwise you get playtesters that will like watch back at you and say, was that correct? Like expecting direct feedback from you. That's something that happens if you interact with them too much. We come to that later. Or if they're feeling like, okay, I'm gonna have to ace this test, otherwise I'm failing at being a gamer. And also the second sentence, it's always different how you can like formulate that, is, okay, we want to have your impression of the game. Not, oh, I don't know, I like it, but other people might feel bad about it. It's like this externalizing how other people might perceive something. That also has to do maybe something with, sometimes with personality of the people. That's just 2 sentences to prime the person even before they respond. You just need to get this out of the way before they start talking back at you, just to prime them and prepare them how this test is going to go. Now, during a regular test, or also in this test, we're doing a short pre-play interview. That's just getting to know the player or welcoming them. Not really necessary. We usually know their demographics or their preferences. It's just to check this up again. You can also check stuff like, okay, yeah, what kind of social media do you use? What kind of videos do you watch, if they want to tell you about it? And what's the general interest they have in a specific genre of game or the game that you are developing. Then we do this whole playtest with these sections. We introduce each section and then we observe. And after that, we immediately get a post-play interview where the people then can make their summary. We have both. We have the observation and then their summary, like they would do on any of these big playtesting platforms, where you have, okay, I have a questionnaire with 100 questions or 10 questions. Here it's done via an interview, so the person who takes the notes also writes a protocol for all these questions. All of these questions need to be prepared in advance. You can sometimes, maybe in a pre-play interview, if you want to know a bit more, you can maybe ask them to elaborate on certain points if something is very unclear or not very specific, or any utterance is not very specific, then you just can ask for any clarification. And this also serves as the comparison to the observation. And we always ask people directly afterwards, how did you find it? That's like a bit of a valve question, so like a pressure valve. If they really disliked something, that you would have that, you would ask for this direct feedback. sometimes people do it during the playtest. You don't have to respond to players there, because what we want also to prepare them when we are doing the playtest is that we ask the players to vocalize their thoughts. You can describe it to them like a playtester. So comment on that, what you're thinking. That almost never works with people after 10 minutes. If you see them looking at stuff, the question of, okay, what are you thinking about? To just remind them that they should vocalize what they're thinking. Some people do that more naturally, others are a bit more shy about it. That's why it's so important to have like this welcoming atmosphere and get players and playtesters ready that they just voice out what they're just thinking about. Then, if you do the observation, you're gonna see a video example later, how we did it for Lavender Station. You have to absolutely limit your interactions with playtesters. I sometimes, if I register that people are very anxious about this situation, leave my mic open and maybe give a friendly just a confirmation that I hear them, but I avoid confirming them or validating what they're saying. I just maybe ask some clarifying questions if I wanted to know something. If you're doing the observation and the moderation, you're not directly really listening to what the player is saying. You are generally more like listening for, okay, what hypotheses or what on this checklist do we have answered in this part, in this section? You're listening for these kind of things. And if they're unclear, just ask them to maybe restate that or clarify that. Very important, do not use any wording that you have in-game. So you have something that's called a quest log in-game. Do not use the word quest or log. Maybe say journal, missions, because players have to do this mental transition, or otherwise they're just searching for a word. You really want to use words that do not appear in the game to describe what you're looking for. Like, okay, you now got a new mission. Where do you have a list of the missions? And then you test the quest log UI and let them describe it to you. That's a really great caveat that we get wrong a lot of the time. It even happens today, or happens in tests that I do, that sometimes you just use the word. You can use the word if like the section where you test that specific feature is already over, and then, okay, yeah, then the players already have found the correct wording that is used in the game. But that's the general thing that really helps to understand, okay, how well do playtesters find something? Oh yeah, observation. We did one for Lavender Station. This is of course more of a demonstration of how this looks like in games. I can't show you anything else what we did with like applications, but this one here specifically for Lavender Station for this game. And yeah, of course, it's my wife, so I'm probably going to ask or talk to her more. Kind of can't avoid it.
So, new game.
Oh yeah, and I didn't ask it in the test, and it's just a conjecture of mine. But we are going to see something here where the playtester kind of misinterprets the style of control and perspective of control that we are going to have. My question is, why do you think that happens? You will see it. Oh, back.
So, new game. I think it's loading. Oh, music. Nice. Okay, there you are. I was beginning.
Do you usually read this kind of dialogue?
Clarifying question.
In the beginning, I will read until I think I understood all of the gameplay, and then it really depends on the setting. Usually, I don't read a lot of flavor text, but in the beginning, for like intro sequences, I will. I'm still a bit unsure where my character is right now, or if I'm the character. I kind of assumed that there would be the character running around here, but I think I just have to click on the stuff and do it. Oh yeah, okay. Nice. So I like this kind of activity a lot.
So yeah, in her case, she's also baking in kind of, okay, I like this, not just understanding, but here she also bakes in a lot of what she prefers. And have you spotted what she not got wrong, but what she misinterpreted? That the character, so yeah, she's the character moved when she clicked and misinterpreted. Absolutely. I didn't ask this one as a follow-up question. It would have been a great follow-up question. That's why it's so important to be always on your feet to notice something. So these are the first few seconds of the game, and it's really nothing against the gamer. So, but my interpretation of this here is that in the first few frames of the game, you see the character walking from left inside the frame, and then the dialogue starts. So
I think it's loud. Oh, music.
So to make the assumption that you're gonna play this character as an avatar, even though the game doesn't have an avatar, kind of makes sense in that second, right? It's also not really a big deal for Lavender Station, it's just one person, but it just shows you, okay, we now can really examine what has happened, why has it happened? Of course, Jan, what you said with, okay, one character moved when you clicked it, that's also absolutely possible. So while all of this is going on, doing the moderation, also did the notes for it. You can, I did a special version. It's just a Google Sheets file. You can mail me if you want that one. That does all this sorting of, okay, we're gonna do hypotheses and so on, and how to rate them. We generally do 4 kind of ratings. True, what we expected absolutely happened. Partially true, they did go the wrong way, maybe first, or they did take a few misclicks, or they had to look for something. So that's in the sheet usually a 2, and 1 moderation had to guide them. They gave up, or they did the exact opposite of that what we expected. In these hypotheses, you can always like formulate stuff like players like flavor text, for example. If you formulate it that way, that would be a relatively true or false question, but always allow this blur for, okay, uncertainty. It's partially true, it's not 100% true. And then also have something for, I did not see this situation in this section, or I haven't seen this specific situation. And I also have in this Google Sheets file, I have a function for you to do recordings, maybe in OBS, and also have timestamps in the sheet. So whenever you observe or take notes, you always have the correct time code for the recording that you're doing, or relatively correct time code. And if you have that time code, maybe some of the more experienced programmer also can do something like linking the video to the specific time code. You can do all of that. It's just to record when something happens and at what time. So one of the things that Dennis asked me to, but we needed to investigate, is how do players perceive the pacing in the game? We generally, or the assumption or base assumption was that maybe it's too slow in the beginning, or players getting annoyed that they cannot get on with it. In the case with my wife was that the game already running in the background kind of induce something like a stress in the sense of, oh, I have to, maybe that's something very Swiss, to have something, oh, the train is coming, we have to do that and that. So even though it wasn't the case, the playtester felt nervous about the game running in the background and trains already arriving, even though we still have a tutorial window open. And then maybe, oh, something happening, I have to go watch. Can have different reasons there. These are a few examples what you will get at the end. Now that's not scientific absolute certainty. Yeah, we know that this is absolutely true. It just gives you an idea where potential problems are. And it gives you kind of a prioritization list where there is a lot of red. You need to kind of improve that, especially if you have like more than 2 or 3 people who come across a problem, then you really see that. With 8, you get really a very good graph that shows you, okay, how many people had problems with that aspect that I tested. Those are really just example results. Yeah, in this view here, that's not directly true. So for this test, we only had 1 playtester. So in her case, it really was the game itself. Could say isn't. There aren't any big issues. The people read tutorials. Also from my experience in UX testing or usability testing, if people are very unsure of what is going on, they will read texts more carefully. Also, people who are not that digital affine and aren't very much computer people, like boomers, they read a lot of the text or a lot of the hints. They will read that because they're unsure. It's the same thing that you have in certain areas where you have like Begegnungszonen. You have no markings on the ground. You have that, so car drivers will be more careful because you don't know what's going on, because you don't have any clear guidance or like middle stripe and so on. And yeah, the only really big thing is that this playtester felt very stressed by the game running in the background while some windows might have been open. So numbers aren't that important for this kind of test. It's really to notice, okay, what were the situations that players had an issue, and can we more closely identify what the issue or what caused the issue. You can, although, of course, you shouldn't do that. You should not change the game between playtesters or change the questions between playtesters. But if you observe something like the one with the character in the first playtest person, can always, if you see that again, can be on your toe, ask, okay, why did you think that? In that moment, the player also has to think and summarize what they're thinking, or maybe reflect back. It's not as good as having them commenting on it by themselves. But yeah. And of course, this one with the recording, that's really great too, to have something and look at it and collect it. In the end, you consolidate all of these 8 groups. You can also, of course, do and say, okay, we have a game for 4 players. Even things like board games or so, you have a group of 4, and how did they react? How were they assembled? What's like their demographics and so on? Then you really can like collect all the feedback and just say, okay, in this section we had 5 playtesters who had no issue and 3 playtesters who had a huge issue. That's an interesting part, or that's maybe a part where we have to focus on. If there are blockers in that way, where we see, okay, people cannot identify or don't have the mental model for that, 3 people have that, that's pretty significant in this kind of test setting with only 8 or 6. Yeah, so that was a good example of like a moderated playtest. I absolutely also have to say we did not do that for our game. Sometimes now, or looking back, I really want to use this kind of thinking and this kind of thinking about how to test people or to test games with people who play them. And what it gives you in the end is you have a structured thing. You have something that is repeated. It's not perfect, and that's also important to know. That's not the absolute truth that I'm telling you here. It's just something or some method that I have adapted that I know that we use to get results quickly or to get interesting insights or insights that we can say, okay, that really seems to be the problem, and to have it in rapid succession. That's better than having people maybe coming to you at a specific event or to have just posts or Discord logs if you don't see what the players are doing and how they understand the game. And yeah, it also helps to getting to know your players, but it's also sometimes very difficult to just sit on the mouth and just be cool with the situation and be calm and be the source of calmness. People are getting desperate or if they really dislike something, just to steer them back on, okay, and what you did do next. So those are all like the soft skill part that are really difficult or they take a long time to get there to be really that kind of person that can do such a test. So that's from my part. We have like 46 minutes. If you are interested in getting this sheet or the Google Docs I've prepared, you can email me. I didn't want to share it directly via link because of we are also recording this, so that's just for to have it in a more controlled way of the people who are here from the Game Hub and so on. Yeah, can just email me or also ask me a question if you're unsure of, okay, what kind of hypotheses do I want to test with my game? Or, yeah, just reflect some stuff back on you. I don't charge for this kind of thing if you're doing it for games. Like I said, there are stuff like Antidote, they do something similar. They do it on a quite larger scale. Also gets expensive really quickly, all of these quantitative stuff, so yeah. But now, like open up everything for questions. How did you previously playtest? Did it help what I show you, or did you learn something? And what have you found out during playtest, or do we have people who have found something really interesting during their playtests? Also have to drink something.
Yes, we did a lot of playtesting for the game we just launched. What you didn't talk about is statistics and gathering of information from the players inside the game, actually. So what we did a lot is, for instance, do heat maps of where people are dragging their mouse, where they're clicking. We're checking how fast they can find a class, for instance, or what they choose. And then we start to analyze, so why do they prefer, for instance, a machine gunner over a rifleman and stuff like that. So this is also data-driven testing is also very interesting.
That's really something that, or I'm not that, I don't know much about the whole, analytics inside of the game stuff, or even inside of the apps. For us, or if I do it in UX research, that's usually the starting point for these kind of interview tests. Okay, we know there is something that would be a great way to, we have a really specific area we want to examine closer with a few, like 8 people. So yeah, well, of course, that's something to like expand the playtests. Did you use Unity Analytics for that?
No, in my case, I made my own analytics. how they're using their upgrades, and do they understand them. And then, for instance, we found that everybody and their dog is buying the fast reload option, and we're thinking like, so the real issue is our reloads are too slow. This is like things you find out by just logging everything.
Yeah, cool.
I have more of a question from your UX experience. What is the golden rule to deal with situations where players single-handedly or collectively make a wrong decision that is influencing the rest of the game? This is particularly not the case for video games, but for example, board games, that can happen very strongly, where they decide on interpreting the rules in a certain way that it's going to affect
So
the
the
rest
decision
of the
is
game.
that they interpret the rules wrongly, or
For example, that's something that can happen in board games. And the question is a bit more, should you just... I mean, typically my intuition would be just to interrupt them because it's going to not work out the rest of the game, but at the same time it's going to influence them strongly and feel that it's going to destroy the point of the playtest. Or should you just continue going and then trying to analyze the rest of the hypothesis?
yeah, in that's the reason, or to prevent this in playtests, that's the reason why we do these sections. You do, if you have board game, for example, I would do the first section is the teaching part, right? Or maybe, okay, this introduction part. You can do, you have the fixed endpoint. This endpoint should be so that it happens no matter what. And if that's over, you can correct them. But then it's clearly, okay, yeah, they did something wrong, but let them try for a short minute with that. Because there is always this little chance that someone says, okay, no, that can't be right, and takes a look, and then maybe they reinterpret something different. And also from the UX perspective, so many times it's just wording. Or what words mean has a very different, or has a lot of influence how people view something. Also in perspective of how to translate games and how to translate them properly, that's so difficult that sometimes a wording, even in German, right? The wording Switzerland and Austria is so different, and people can interpret them wildly different. Especially for card game rules, that's so, or not card game rules, but in general game rules.
Hi, thanks for the talk. I guess that might also be a difference between UX and games, that games would have like late game content that people would first have to experience first parts of the game before experience the later parts even makes sense. Any advice on how to test that, given that it would make sense to just have people test short parts or short tests?
In that case, it's probably when we test or test in UX, we usually test prototypes, and there you always have data or mock-up data, maybe, and you can do late game content, but you also have to work with this section. You maybe have to do a prototype where you have all the things that you want to test in the first part, have a section from the mid game where all of maybe some of the most important mechanics for the late game come in, and then the late game test. But on the other hand, it's also that the thing that really needs to be polished are the first half hour of your game. Just, okay, we really want to reel players in. In that case, that's also maybe something that you could test after launch, or is something for an update, or something if you have already a demo of people who have already maybe played the game. That's difficult. But you also notice that in playtests, or in this testing method, you always have to account for, okay, people are going to learn something, and what did they learn, or what did they take over from like the last section. That's also maybe something that you could potentially test. But that's difficult. In that case, don't bother, but if you have a way to maybe teach that mechanic shortly, you can even use like the introduction of the new section. You can maybe also explain that. That's a part where you can explain it. You have to explain it from text, like everyone gets the same explanation. Maybe they're also allowed to read it, or maybe watch a video, read it. Yeah, but of course it's a different story for games where you have like muscle memory and movement. Yeah, that would probably be my answer for it.
Thanks.
It seems to be quite difficult to create a comfortable environment where the players actually are comfortable playing the game. From your experience, just as an idea, would it make sense, for example, to have two friends that never played the game to test it together, where you have one player and one observer, where they basically talk to each other instead of like an authority figure like the game developer? Or like just from your experience?
So that you don't have to moderate the test, or
exactly, so that they can basically figure it out between each other. Like you might have like the observer noticing something that the player didn't, so you don't really have like accurate timings, but you basically still get from that like a more natural environment where people play it compared to like being observed by the developer.
That's a really good question. I wouldn't know if what the results or how that one would look like. I can guess, or so one person already knows how to play the game and just does
both of them don't know.
Of them learning.
Yes.
Yeah, you could also use that. That was one of the few things that I kind of liked with our game. It's more a single player experience where you're playing that one alone. But one thing where you like get a lot is if two people are playing it and they have to communicate, then you maybe have that as a help to get this like thinking out loud better and to vocalize thoughts better. I could see that to work, but if you don't have a person that is not directly the developer, you can of course test your own game. If you have no other way for it, then it's just very important that you limit what you say, and yeah, you can use two people. That's a valid strategy. But my question would be: is the game usually played by two people?
Yeah, it would just basically be trying to basically get a more natural response, because if I'm like feel like I'm testing this, then a lot of the natural things that would come up I would naturally suppress and maybe be more comfortable to tell a friend, hey, by the way, this is something I'm noticing that I'm struggling with.
Yeah. So the players wouldn't tell you what...
yeah, exactly. Where they feel more comfortable basically having like a positive feedback loop on stuff that they notice.
You can reinforce them if they voice some criticism, for example. That helps already a lot. And if you, that's like the best thing or intro you can get and say, okay, we're really testing the game, not you. Your opinion really, really isn't that important. Or no, your opinion is not important for me personally, or something like that. Although I can see that possibly players also don't want to hold back if they're sitting across the developer of the game itself. I would not do it for a single player game, maybe. If it's something that a lot of people playing games together, like adventure games sitting together on the couch, and that's a situation that happens a lot, then yes. Otherwise, you really want to have the most realistic situations that people usually play the game in.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, it was just a hypothetical. Yeah.
Yeah. You could try. Do we have another slide here? No. So yeah. Andre, do you want to say something?
Not really. I think we just go over to the where everyone talks with each other and drink something.
And have beers.
To that part. Thank you very much.
Thank you.